I'm a big dreamer. I think that's the thing about me. I'm incredibly ambitious. I do have a healthy fear of failure, but I think like every athlete has a fear of failure. But you do need them failures to progress and realize where you went wrong.
Dive Beyond Sport, the podcast where performance meets humanity. Today's guest is Ben Wiggins. Ben, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you both. It's a pleasure to be on. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
Super excited for this conversation, Ben. To get into, the person that you are and the athlete that you are, I think it's really important to kind of acknowledge the connection that you have to the sport. For you, what do you see as the benefits to being the son of the great Sir Bradley Wiggins?
Yeah, I mean, it's still like, I guess, like the answer to that question, I think I'm still kind of like figuring it out in terms of like a concrete, this is what the benefits and this is what I don't like about it, because it changes every now and again. But I'd say like probably, for example, one of the things that I quite enjoy at the minute, especially at this moment in time as I'm kind of progressing, it's kind of working with the people that he was teammates with or coached by, because obviously in all sports it's such a small world. So I'm like often working with a lot of his former coaches, former teammates, and who have then moved into different areas of the sport. I'd say that's probably my favorite thing at the minute, that I'm enjoying. Just like hearing old stories and stuff like that. That's definitely a benefit that I know a lot of, well, most guys don't have. But I think just, having that like such a key inspiration figure so close to you, I think is quite a unique situation to be in. Like just seeing, obviously I grew up when he was in the kind of peak of his career. So it's like to be able to grow up seeing that every day and then being able to apply it to my own journey now is like, I think something that's really, really valuable. And definitely one of the areas where I've had a little bit of a leg up, let's say.
But talking about your own journey, I think one thing that I was a little bit surprised, but also very interested to find out, was that you didn't, it seemed like you didn't actually commit to cycling, to being a cycler actually super early. Obviously, having the influence that you had, you might assume that, that would just be like maybe the obvious path, or even you might, potentially like fight against that. But I got the impression that you were very sporty, did a lot of things, and then eventually committed to cycling. Could you maybe clarify that? Like, when did you make that commitment, and what kind of happened at that stage? And when did your identity become, all right, I'm now Ben the cyclist?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good question. I think again, it's kind of what makes me a little bit unique, I guess, again, in my journey is, as a kid, I was just super sporty, wanted to be outdoors all the time, just running around with a ball or just running around in general, to be fair. But like where I kind of grew up through my childhood, in the Wigan area in the northwest, it's like a massive rugby town. So like, I kind of naturally, I guess, I was playing rugby, football. It's a pretty decent level in rugby. And that was kind of my main sport. I then went to a rugby school, not far away. And yeah, that was kind of like my main focus for a long time, like through kind of like, into my early teens, until kind of COVID hit when I turned 15. I think it was the day we went into COVID for lockdown for COVID. That was my 15th birthday.
What a birthday treat. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, yeah. But but yeah, I think up till that point, I remember the 12 months leading into COVID, I'd kind of like started to, I'd started racing locally, or like I think I'd done, there was a national youth like race weekend, like 10 minutes from my house, and I was like, oh, we'll give it a go, because I've always like rode my bike like for enjoyment and stuff. Like it was kind of, couldn't avoid it if I wanted to, really. But
I could
yeah,
imagine. I could imagine.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was just saw it as a bit of fun, really. Something to, because like it was in the summer holidays as well. First, like, I wasn't playing rugby. It was, a way of keeping fit, if anything. And then I think when COVID came and like all of a sudden you can't play team sports anymore, I think like from what I remember, I was gifted a bike from like a local, well, they're quite a big national cycling like business. They, you can buy whatever like bikes, equipment and stuff from Sigma Sports, they're called. I'm like grateful to them still to this day. They lent me a bike and I just like, oh, okay, well, I may as well like use it. And I just started going out for a ride in lockdown in COVID, and just, started to really enjoy it. And I did some structured training, and I was like, okay, this is like decent. And then I remember, so it was like basically around that point. And then I remember like later on that year when things started to pick up a little bit, like, and we kind of, as a society, kind of went back to normality. I got an email one day from like the British Cycling Pathway program, saying like, oh, we want you to come on to the like the youth kind of Olympic pathway development program. So I was like, okay, let's do that, So I'd say from that point on, really, it was like, okay, cycling's now the main sport. But I wouldn't say I like identified myself. When someone asks you, what do you do? I wouldn't say I am a cyclist until probably I turned into my junior racing years, which would have been the year after.
It's really interesting. I'm quite interested in that right now, because I just finished reading this book called Range by David Epstein. But the focus of it is like how actually over specialization can be a hindrance in a lot of areas. But one area they focused on was sport. And so I just thought that actually, like, I wondered if you'd ever thought about that, and having, like, how do you feel like you might have benefited from your very sporty background like that? Because obviously your success in cycling is, relatively quick. I think it's probably fair to say, right? From actually something like, okay, I'm a cyclist now, seems pretty fast. If I just picked up a bike, I don't think I'd be getting a call up from the GB team anytime soon. So yeah, I wonder if you feel like, for example, the rugby and football and just in general, just like being active, like how much that maybe like accelerated your progress.
I mean, I think I don't want to make out like I was some cycling novice. Like, don't get me wrong. Like I was like still pretty, as far as newcomers go, like I was pretty like clued up and like, yeah, I guess like ready to I kind of like missed the first couple steps that I think someone who was brand new to cycling would experience, of course. But yeah, so I think I wasn't like super far behind from the start. And as I say, I think because it's not like, I mean, you see it so much with like, I don't know, like triathletes, they would go and specialize in cycling then after, or whatever, because I think whatever you do, if you're active and super fit, I think when you're like 15, 16, 17, it's not like you don't have to have specialized in that up to that point in your life to kind of make quick progress. But I think, yeah, to I guess answer your question, I wouldn't say it's massively like benefited me. I think there are benefits to it, like with everything, but I wouldn't say that it's like, I wouldn't say it massively sped up my progression, but I wouldn't say it's like affected it in any way. That's for sure. But yeah, I guess that's probably not the best answer to it, but that's my answer anyway.
No, it makes total sense, and I think it's actually really cool that you had the opportunity to just try different things and do different sports. I think something that really helped me from a young age was just doing loads of sports. I was a very sporty kid. I enjoyed playing football, rugby, cricket at school, taught me loads of different things. And then slowly but surely, I committed more and more to diving and found success there. But the most important thing was the fact that I actually enjoyed diving more than I enjoyed any of the other sports. And that's why I wanted to commit to it more. I think with your surname, you know, people would probably say, oh yeah, it's inevitable that he's going to become a cyclist. And he's probably been given opportunities because of the surname, which obviously isn't necessarily true. It's really cool actually that the fact that you were able to find cycling just out of the enjoyment of it in the circumstances is amazing. But obviously you're at the very start of your journey in theory. You've got a lot to come in the future, and you're very confident about what you could potentially achieve in the future, which is a super cool thing. But you know, where does that confidence come from in terms of the fact that you are still so fresh in your cycling career?
Well, I think kind of, I mean, I often have to remind myself, or people around me will remind me, that it's really easy to forget how little time I have actually been doing this for, you know, in terms of like experience and stuff. Because like cycling is only really well, when you're at like kind of youth level and junior level, it's only a 6-month season. So, you know, people think, oh, like you've been racing, training 4 years, like it's a massive, that's quite a long time. But in sport, it isn't really. You know, you get limited opportunities. There's, you know, it's not like there's something to, there's not an event or a competition every single day, you know, like you're talking like there's maybe 4 or 5 events a year to really like show your progress, if you like, you know, because like, I mean, obviously you've got the big events that there's only so many times a year you can be on peak performance to show what you have, the progress you've made, I guess.
Yeah, well, so that's something you experience.
So that's something I have to remind myself quite often. It really is that I haven't been doing it very long, but if I look at the kind of trajectory and my trajectory on my progress and what I've been able to achieve so far, and then alongside with the setbacks I've had, like all athletes have, you know, and how I've responded to those, and, you know, come back to and kind of come back to the trajectory I'm supposed to be on. It just gives me a lot of confidence, basically. Like, I don't know if I've explained it very well, but like, it's, to keep it short, like, just basically what I feel I've achieved in a short amount of time, it just fills me with confidence that kind of like, oh, like what's next, you know? Like, obviously one day we'll probably find the limit, but like, why, until we find the limit, then why assume that there is one, you know? Or always think it's close or whatever. That's my thinking on that.
I love that.
Really.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. Wow, yeah, what a thing to say. I love that. One thing Jonas says often is like, it's so important to back yourself, you know, as an athlete, as a person, to back yourself. And it's something I had difficulty with actually as an athlete. So like, you know, what you're 20, is it, Ben?
Yeah.
20.
And that's another thing, you know, I think like in sport in general, we're always talking about like the next unicorn that's coming through, that's, you know, like in darts, you got like Luke Littler, and, you know, all sports, there's like always that one young athlete that's coming through that's just shocking everyone, and then that becomes like the new norm. And I think it is really important to remember like that everyone develops at their own speed, and, you know, everyone has different backgrounds of how and speeds that they've got to where they're already at. So yeah, as I say, it's something I remind myself of quite often, that, you know, I am 20 years old. I'm not going to be, you know, absolutely flying yet.
I think that's a very mature attitude to take, actually, Ben. That's impressive. But I from what you said, it kind of obviously to me it kind of sounds like, from your perspective, obviously you take a step back and you go, oh, actually, I'm 20. I've achieved this. I only really started this properly when I was, 15, 16. Actually, and my career, it can go on and on, particularly in cycling, like, because you have those divisions like junior, under 23, like, so, it's very well recognized that this is a thing that can, to be done for a long time. But obviously you said, remind yourself. And you also said, I think, like the trajectory that you're supposed to be on. So I guess, I don't know, I wonder if that sounded to me like there's also like, in the moment, particularly when you can get caught up in it, like, do you feel the pressure, and where does that pressure come from, if it is there, do you think?
Well, I think because, yeah, I mean, I am someone that, I think as most young athletes, really, like, it's really easy to fall into a trap of like putting pressure on yourself. And that's something I've been really guilty of. I think, like, really just thinking I need to like achieve all this, like do this now and do that by the end of this year or whatever. But I think progress isn't linear, I think is the saying, isn't it? So it's like, and it is, I think when I say the trajectory thing, I think like based on the said trajectory I'm talking about is like probably, okay, like Ben's coming out of youth racing now, like this is his trajectory we expect from him as a junior. And during my time as a junior cyclist, I probably started under that, and then like kind of, if you say the line's here, I probably dipped under that to start with and then finished above it. And then the same when I move up to under 23, it's like, okay, this is based on what Ben achieved as a junior, this is his new trajectory for under 23. And then again, as all athletes have, you have setbacks and you probably chipped a little bit, So when I say that, and then it links to like having to remind yourself that that is the case, that it's not over, you're not failing, and it's, yeah, I don't know, it's just and I think that leads to putting pressure on yourself, I think. And then like in any high performance environment, like I'm part of the men's endurance squad on the British cycling team, and I think we're the most successful I think we're the most successful British sports team, or one of the cycling team. So, with that, comes an elitist attitude and, a bit of a pressure cooker environment at times, which, you've got to learn to deal with at the end of the day. And I think you've got to, and I think as a young athlete, you've got to try and like figure out the best way to deal with that for yourself. I don't think there's like a textbook answer on, okay, you need to do this you need to approach this certain scenario with this mental attitude to then come out the other side better. It's just like a whole, I don't know how to explain it really. It's just, you've got to find your own path, and people will do that at different speeds as well.
So we all know that sport is challenging. There's no linear progression. What scares you about the future? What do you anticipate is going to be challenging for you in the future as you try and develop towards your ambitions?
To be honest, like I'm a big dreamer, and like I think that's the thing about me. I think I'm incredibly ambitious, and to be honest, there's nothing springing to mind right now that I think I could tackle or come across that would scare me per se. I think I do have a healthy fear of failure, but I think like a lot of athletes, or every athlete has a fear of failure, but I think you do need them failures to progress and, realize where you went wrong. And I think, you know, like I've experienced it myself. Like last year, I didn't make the World Championships team, which sounds crazy as a 20-year-old, you know, like you didn't make the world's team, like, you know, but that was a real big one for me. And, you know, that was a real setback that I felt was necessary now, looking back. I probably wasn't ready for that opportunity, but I've used it through this. That was back in October, and now we're in January, and I've used that fuel to go and be selected for the European Championships. And, you know, I feel like I've made a massive step in my progression over the past few months. And I feel like if I've prepared myself for that kind of scenario. So I think the challenge, I think there'll be many more challenges like that along the road. And I think I feel well equipped to, I mean, it's easy to say, I mean, who knows, I might not be well equipped, but like, I hope I am. But to me, like, I feel like I can soak up experiences pretty well. So, you know, of course, with every sport, you have your failures, you have your challenges, but I think it's how, you know, you react to them and respond. And I think being aware of your emotions and how certain things made you feel and like what worked in the aftermath of that and what didn't, so you can adapt to different scenarios. I feel, but of course, like in every sport, there's, you know, there's so many challenges that you can't prepare for. So of course there will be those along the way, but I think just being aware of that is a good, you know, it's not a bad place to I don't think a lot of athletes are actually aware to begin with that, you know, it's probably going to happen at some point. And obviously there are very odd few that, you know, are just super talents and can seem to just go wrong. But unfortunately, I'm not one of them. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. To answer your question, I know the challenges will come, but I feel like being prepared for them is the first step in overcoming them.
I love the way you talk about it, Ben. Actually, it's really cool.
I elaborate way too much. I find myself like in my brain going on a little tangent,
no, you don't.
And I'm like, right, step back.
Yeah,
Just
it's
answer
a
the
nice,
question.
it's a nice little brain journey though. It's really cool. It's really cool. But every time you answer something, it makes me smile straight away. So I just love the way that you like answer questions. It's amazing.
Me too, man.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. In my head, I'm like, I must be making no sense here. I'm just going on and on and on.
So I feel the same way sometimes. Just chatting garbage sometimes.
Absolutely. But you know, actually, I do think this is the advantage of a podcast, of also doing a podcast. You know, this is something, you know, just slightly talking about ourselves for a minute. One thing that Yona and I have spoken about and think is a really cool thing about part of what we're doing. We want to share, obviously, athlete stories, you know, the truth behind what it's like actually being inside an athlete's head. But also at the same time, it's not all the time necessarily for all athletes that you get an opportunity to maybe sometimes even answer these questions, even reflect on your own journey. So it's, you know, I think, you know, I'd like to think that even, you know, obviously from your side, it's also a
100%.
cool opportunity to, like, you know, kind of go into some of this stuff.
Yeah, because I think as an athlete, I mean, you guys will know as well, like you don't often get opportunities to kind of talk about your experiences really and like reflect on them. So no, I really enjoy doing stuff like this because, you know, as you say, you know, I'm answering questions that it's like, okay, I've never actually thought about this before. So it's a nice way of reflecting, really. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the start. It's a pleasure to be here on the podcast. So thank you.
Oh, mate. Yeah, well, and again, and just like, you know, finally on that again from us, like I mentioned Jack Law earlier, this diver, best friend of ours. Like me and Yona, we grew up together, you know, and obviously like we're good mates with Tom Daly, but I've never sat down with Jack or with Tom or even really with Yona and like asked a lot of these questions until now starting to do like this. So it's like, even for us, it's like we're actually finally like understanding each other and sharing our own stories. So that's, yeah, it's cool. But you said about you're a dreamer. then, and I really like that, but I'm kind of curious. Have you ever thought about like where that comes from? Yeah, again, obviously, like there's your dad's influence. Like, was it, seeing him achieve? Did that give you that belief, or just like being around elite sport from a young age, or do you think it's just more innate and internal? Or...
No, I think that's definitely where it came from, 100%. Like, I think I see so many, like you'll see an athlete that's just achieved something huge, and in their interview after, they like can't believe it. They're like, I'd never dreamt of achieving something like this. But I think in the future, like hopefully, I don't think I'll be that kind of athlete in an interview, because to me, this is like those are the kind of things I'm dreaming about of achieving. And who's just like, I mean, who's to say? I'm not going to sit here for a second right now and say like, oh, I am gonna go and do this and this and this. But kid can dream, can't he? So I think, but that for sure is definitely where it come from. I think that what I just alluded to with athletes is maybe they've not necessarily been able to, they've not seen the pathway firsthand of, wow, this is actually possible. But I think, again, what I'm really fortunate to have been able to do and see throughout my entire life really is that it is possible, and this seeing the steps that is necessary. Because I think what people were so gripped to with my dad was that he was just a lad from North London, grew up on a council estate, and in a time where cycling was not a popular sport, so it's I mean, for all athletes, it's like, if he can do it, then why can't I? But even more so when it's your own dad that's doing it, and you're seeing it every day. So I think that is definitely where it's come from. Like, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, really. Like, with the question, to be honest, I think that's 100% the origin of how I go about it, I'd say.
I think it's really important to dream, and I used to say that my dreams were delusional, and having delusional dreams is what took me to achieve what I achieved, which I never should have achieved based on where I came from, based on what I look like, based on my body shape and everything in the sport that I was doing. It had to be delusional.
If you don't shoot for the stars, you'll hit the clouds, or so I think that's the saying.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just you're 100% right.
Exactly. Like, you dream of more than you maybe are capable of, and you'll push yourself much further than you ever believe you could. And I think it's so powerful. I think it's something that people are almost scared of sometimes. But one thing that I think isn't one thing that I think is also important is the identity of the person away from their sport, and the dreams away from the sport. And it's something that I push myself with, to develop outside of sport as much as possible, but not every athlete does. And again, this is a really cool thing about speaking to someone who hasn't actually been through the entire journey yet. What is success for you off the bike? What is Ben Wiggins like away from the velodrome?
I think first and foremost, like, one thing I really pride myself on is being, especially with the people, like, I love hearing what Freddie just said about, your relationship like you guys have, and with Tom. And for example, that is something that I want to be a good friend to my teammates, because we spend so much time together. And, like, I think so, for example, like the boys that I'm going to the Euros with next week, since before Christmas, I think we've spent more time with each other than with our own families. So, and some of the boys, they have their own children and wives, and that's a big thing. And I think that if I can't build good relationships out of those with those people, then I can't be a very good person at the root of it all, I feel. So that's something that's really important to me. But as well, like, I've always been, as I said before, I'm a dreamer. I always wanted to, when I finish cycling, I always want to be able to capitalize on the opportunity to come off the back of what I've achieved, whatever it is that I go on to achieve. So, whether that's, I've can go to the Olympics or to the Olympics and, be a Tour de France rider, I want to be able to, you know, share my story and use that to inspire others and also, make a name for myself, that's ultimately what I would be satisfied with and proud of when I look back on my career when it's all said and done. I mean, granted, I hope we're a long way away from that, but that's what I'm trying to build for myself, and I think that's, but the core values of being a good person are, I think, the main thing for me. More than any of that can come off the bike. Because I know, it's no secret, like with athletes, like there's incredible amount of opportunities that can come off the back of that. I want to be able to be in a position that I can capitalize on, going to the Olympics or, riding the Tour de France, for example, winning world titles. Those are the things that, that can make you bigger than your sport in a way. And, that's something that I'm really keen to try and achieve as well, because they are achievements in themselves.
Well, and I do think that's really important. I think I actually failed in that aspect. But yeah, to some degree. Like I didn't take that seriously enough, and maybe there was an issue with some self-belief there. But for example, I remember again Tom, like post Rio, saying to me, like, you've got 6 months to capitalize here. But I was like, but I don't, like, but what? Like, what do I do? And not everything like just naturally came to me, but I also didn't take advantage, take it into my own hands. And so I think that the fact that you're acknowledging that is super important, because that it's a weird thing to say, but I do think there is a game element to life, right? And it's like, let's all be real here. Like we're also trying to achieve things and make sure that we can live the life that we want to be able to live, and to be able to support friends and family. But the way that you mentioned that about friends, I think, was really powerful. And I also wanted to ask actually about cycling and like GB cycling, because we did a podcast with a nutritionist who was she was a sprinter, and she said that people don't take nutrition seriously in sport. Like, it's getting better, but still the nutritionist is like below the S&C coach, but she believes that it's like fundamental. But she said the one exception she said was cycling, and that they have like more than one full-time nutritionist, and they're like really supporting people. So, but also what you said about you wanting to support your teammates, that really stood out to me. So I kind of wonder, like, the support, the team aspect side of things, is that something that's taught in GB cycling? Or like, so where does some of this success, do you think, come from?
Oh, no, definitely. But I think, like most young athletes are, I think it's something that every young athlete has to learn to kind of to deal with. And I think especially as I'm kind of progressing and I'm part of the men's endurance squad on the Great Britain cycling team, like, I think, like, actually that can be quite a pressure cooker environment to be in, and quite maybe a difficult environment to be in if you're 19, 20 like myself. So I think it's just about like finding your own way around that, really, and the best way to deal with it, and then also like figuring out what gets the best out of you in that situation. Because like, you can take different, I know I have as well, you can take different mental approaches, but then sometimes it doesn't really work. Like, so I for example, just to elaborate on that, like I've been like proper focused, like locked in all the time, and like trying to, yeah. And then for me personally, I found out that it just makes me overthink, and then it's kind of detrimental to your performance. So it's like, and then on the flip side, you can have athletes who are quite relaxed and, they try and take a really laid back approach to it. And then equally, then obviously that doesn't work sometimes either. So I think it's just like finding the balance and what works for you. And like equally, both of them scenarios do work for some athletes. But I think particularly that I found was about, probably neither of them extremes work for me. It's just about finding something in the middle.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about trial and error, isn't it? And the only way to figure it out is through time. And as you mentioned, you haven't had much time to figure it out so far. So you're kind of going through all the learnings that are necessary to be at that level, but you're kind of already in that level. So you're figuring out kind of in the job, which is kind of exciting, but kind of scary, particularly when it comes to moments of disappointment and difficulties. You've spoken about setbacks, and we've also mentioned pressure and I guess expectation that comes with where you are. But how did you deal with any self-doubt, if there was any, that manifested itself when you were going through some difficult moments of setbacks?
Well, I think probably the biggest one that comes to my mind, the biggest setback I've had in my career, without doubt, right? Like it was 2 years ago. I had a really bad injury to my elbow, and it kept me off the bike. I mean, it was actually at a really bad time as well, because I'd just come off my off season. So I had 6 weeks off, I think I'd had. It was a long one, but I'd had 6 weeks off, and I'd been training a couple of weeks, and I unfortunately like smashed my elbow to bits. So it's like, right. And then that was another 2 months off the road. So it's like, and that was a really big year for me, because I was coming out of junior, going into the under 23s. And that's a real big winter where you've got to, not got to, but like that's where you're expected to kind of, you could do with a really good then base and winter of training to kind of set you up for that step up in level. And yeah, that was a really tough period for me. That took me probably not too long ago, really, to kind of like really refine my confidence. Because at that time I came out of junior, I was a world champion on the track, I was a world's medalist on the road. So, like I was going into that period like feeling good about myself, and then that massive setback happens, and you're like, wow, okay, I'm not indestructible. And it took me 6 months to like get back to a competitive level, but still not the level I wanted to be at. So I think again it's like trial and error. You never know how you deal with those situations until you walk through the fire. So like I don't, again, to answer the question, I don't think there's no textbook answer on how to do it. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes a situation like that to really like find out how you deal with it in that scenario.
Yeah, and I always love to transition things like that into a positive frame, where actually it's probably a benefit that you experience something like that so early on in your career, because you've learned now how to deal with it straight away. I had my first serious injury in 2022, which was 2 years before I then retired, 18 months before I retired. So I experienced my first serious injury right at the back end of my career. And, it's a harder one at that time, because you don't know if you're going to be able to come back from it. You don't know if you're going to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. And I only had a year until the qualification for Paris in that time. But I was actually really impressed with the way that I dealt with it. And I couldn't have predicted that was going to be the way that I dealt with it, because I'd never been through it before. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to expect. And I didn't know how to feel about not being able to train for an extended period of time. But it's almost lucky, quote unquote, that you've experienced this already in this at this time of your career. So if, touch wood, it does happen again, hopefully it doesn't, you already have an idea of what you need to do to be able to get back to your best as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I think I can't remember what I was going to say now. But I think like yeah, as you say, that experience was oh yeah, that was it. I was like I've been I was thinking like I have thoughts, recently, like, I had that situation not happened, I don't think I'd be the athlete I am today. So, and I think that, that experience, well, I wouldn't say it will put me in better stead, but it will, I think it will help me mentally going forward. And it definitely changed me as an athlete afterwards as well, just in the months that followed. Like, I think it made me really grow up as a person as well and realize that, like this is a job now. It's not so much a hobby anymore. So I think it's helped me from a professional sense, that's for sure.
Well, and I think it's so important as well what you said. I mean, we already acknowledged that this is you take a step back, like this is a long-term thing. And for example, you said about feeling indestructible. Like a good friend of ours, Jack Law, he's one of the most successful divers of all time, Olympic gold medalist. But in his first Olympics in London, he didn't make the semi-final. He like failed a dive and like flopped in front of the huge home crowd and all this stuff. But he went into that, like, again, in his sort of words, it sort of reminded me, because he was talking about he felt indestructible, and he's having all these visions about what he could do. So actually, that Olympics was the lesson for him that allowed him to sort of maybe whatever learn what he needed to learn, and then he went on into Rio and won a gold and a silver medal. In the most successful Olympics that diving had ever had at that time. It's like incredible. So I do think, as you've already recognized, actually it is these setbacks that set you up. But also I know another thing that's really important for setting you up is mentors, is guides, is coaches. And I kind of wanted to ask you about that. Obviously it strikes me like there's a few really important people, and obviously in terms of like you've got your pro team right now, like Axel Merckx, right? And obviously I think he's also had a famous father, and then you got like Giles Pidcock, and also I guess your dad as well, right? And I'm sure there's loads of people who have maybe helped you, but do you feel like role models have been an important part in your journey?
100%. Like, I think, like, I'm very, 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 very fortunate that because of, I guess like that goes back to the first question, like that I was asked was, what are the benefits of being who I am? Like, one of the benefits for sure is that I am able to like contact these role models, like people I've grown up watching cycling, like I have them in my phone book, which is like crazy to me still. So, and like I would call, so Mark Cavendish, for example, or like him and my dad's relationship is well documented. Like I see him as like a brother of mine, it's like our relationship is like very much like big brother, little brother. So I'm just very, very fortunate to have a relationship and like have access to that, and as well, like especially, I mean, because I've not had numerous coaches through my career yet, because I've not been going, as I say, this is 2026 now. Like it is fifth year of this will be my fifth year of competitive cycling. Sorry. So, but like I'd say my first coach when I got onto the GB program, Stuart Blunt, he's infamous with bringing all the British stars that you see in cycling now through to that made them who they are today. But Stuart was the main one for me, where he was the perfect balance of, we're still 17, 18-year-old lads at this point. He was the perfect balance of preparing you for what was to come and performance, but also being that arm around the shoulder and understanding that we are still 17, 18-year-old lads. And without Stuart, I wouldn't be where I am today. That's for sure. I know so many other lads would say the same thing.
Yeah, super powerful to have good guys like that. I'm very lucky that I had a number of good coaches throughout my career. And for me, the access that you got is crazy. The access that you got is like what ChatGPT is for some people. They'll be like, talk to me like you are the most experienced cyclist in the world and give me the best advice. And you've literally got that in your phone book since it's super cool. But one thing I saw that you mentioned before is that your dad's presence is almost more valuable than his advice, and it's like that presence when he steps into the room. That's extremely powerful because it shows that he really believes in and trusts in your abilities. And I've felt that before when a high profile figure or someone that just commands, you know, respect and presence walks into a room and the vibe changes. Like I had that with Usain Bolt when I was in the village in Glasgow, and he walked into the room, and I instantly felt a change in the environment just by his presence. What does that feel like for you, say, if you're on the track preparing and he just arrives? How does that feel?
To be honest, how you've just described, I would say, not like for me personally, it's just my dad, but like,
Yeah,
but it's not. But again, it's not just my dad. Like that's his, especially the velodrome. Like if he comes into the velodrome to, I don't know, like at the national champs or something, like it's always been special for me to have him there, you know. And to be honest, like there's not a lot I really need from him in terms of advice at this stage, because I'm learning it for myself, and the sport's so different to when he was around. There's still, of course, like things that I can apply. There's things of like warm-up techniques and things like that. They still all apply now. But I think, yeah, as you've just said, like the presence alone is a lot more valuable than any advice he could give me, really. I feel anyway. But yeah, like if as you just said, like I can't, it's not really something I can explain. It just changes the whole dynamic of it really for me, that, you know, he's there to see me, see me perform really. And I don't know if that feeling is like, oh, it's because it is to everyone else. Bradley Wiggins has just walked in the velodrome, but to me, it's like Dad's walked in the velodrome and he's seen me perform. That's how I look at it. But it feels similar to what you've just applied, what you just said.
Yeah. I think what you said also about, you know, having to learn things for yourself in this period is also really, really important, because I think no lessons are better learned if unless they're learned for yourself. Like you can be told things over and over and over again, but when you actually go through it yourself, that's when it's most powerful. That's when it hits home the most. But for you, in terms of looking forward to the future, and this is really cool that we have, you know, someone that's right at the start of their career on the podcast, because most of the time we've spoken to people who have been through their career and are reflecting. But I think it's a really cool experience to think about the person that you want to become on and off the bike.
Yeah, so I guess, you know, we've talked about, like, I was really impressed by what she said about the nutrition, the mindset in cycling and how they prioritize that. And obviously I've heard stories about the cycling team in the past about like why it's been so successful, but also what you said then about you wanting to support your teammates and be the best friend to them possible. Like that stood out to me. And to me, that's a sign of success. So like, is that something that's taught there, or like, I'd be curious to know.
I guess I found that mentality through, it's something I kind of picked up on through my performance really, because I think whilst these guys are your friends, and you know, they are your friends because you spend so much time together, but you're also, it's a really unique environment for all, you know, elite sporting squads, in that you are competing against each other at the end of the day. So it's about finding that balance, and I've really tried to remove that I'm performing against you guys element to it, because I'm competing against you guys. I'd say I've completely removed that from my mentality, because I feel like at the end of the day, you can only really worry. There's no point worrying about what anyone else is going to do to me. Like we're all hyper successful athletes, and we're competing at the top of our sport. So, we're all exceptional in our own right. So it comes down to who, when you're talking about selection for World Championships, Olympic Games, everyone's at the top of their game, and it comes to who's going to execute better on the day when it comes to selection. And, you're talking like fine margin. So to me, I don't waste any energy on, worrying. I just focus on what I can do to be at my best. And if I'm not deemed to be the best by the best coaches in the world, then they're probably right, because there's a reason they're there and in the position they're in as well. So I think that's something I've, tried to adopt over the past 12 months, especially, is that, these guys are my friends, and we're all competing for the same thing. And to be honest, if there's any, if you want anyone to go instead of you, it's your friends. So that's the way I really try and look at it, and just really focus on my own performance and what I can do to be in the best position I can be in to perform. And to me, the rest is just water off a duck's back. I think that, and of course in high performance environments, as always, in any walk of life really, and whether that's like jobs, high-end jobs, you're all working towards something, then, tensions can rise, and, it can get a bit, there can be a bit of an animosity in a room sometimes. But I think when it all comes down to it, it's being able to separate that from, because sport isn't real life a lot of the time. I think it's really important to be able to separate the two. So again, that's, as I said, like it's something that's really important to me, and something that I value, is that I, keep the good relationships despite the kind of, win, lose or draw, essentially.
Yeah, you're totally right. I think it's so important because, sport is just not real life, and it does get super intense, and things can happen which just ruins relationships for no reason. One thing that ultimately is just a very short-term thing. And we're really lucky in the sport of diving that it's a very friendly sport, and we all get along really well, and it's just all good vibes, and it's all really, really nice. And I don't really know what a cycling is. I can imagine it is a bit more competitive, a bit more like intense maybe, but as you say, you just spend so much time with people that you almost have no choice but to get along with them, or else the time that you spend with them is miserable. And the main reason why you do what you do is because you actually fundamentally enjoy the sport and being out on the road or being in the velodrome and just destroying your legs.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's also, it kind of fits in with the kind of person I like, the rider I want to be as well, the athlete I want to be. I want to develop into a leader. I want to be, 10 years from now, I want to be a leader on the squad. So, I want to be someone that the guys look up to as, someone who's not only, at that point, if we're talking 10 years away, someone who's also, performing to a world-class level, but, someone that you can, he's just one of the lads at the end of the day. And I saw some, pretty, not long ago about, some of the old Liverpool players that they were playing when Steven Gerrard was around. And they asked him like, what was he like to be around? I bet imagine it was quite intense, but they just said he was one of the lads, and away from the football pitch, you could just have a good time with him. And that's something that, again, just goes back to what I just said. That's something that I want to develop into. So I think if I can start that process now of becoming that, you know, and someone that my, you know, teammates like away from the bike, you know, because, you know, we're at the track maybe 5 hours max, you know, and then you've got, you know, we're often staying in hotels together and stuff. It's like, I don't want to be that guy that goes and, you know, sits in my room and, you know, have my teammates in the next room thinking, oh, you know, we've got to go to war with this guy tomorrow. You know, I think that adds so much more to it. I think especially, you know, in the event we do often, you know, the team pursuit in a marathon, you know, you do it at the Madison, you do it with a pair. In the team pursuit, you're in a team of 4. I think it just adds, and it's similar to diving, you know, when you're doing the pair, you know, I think it's I don't
synchro,
yeah, when you're doing synchro event, like I imagine for you guys, it's adds so much more if you're doing it with someone that you know, really value the relationship you have with them, you know, so it just makes you want to achieve it even more. So that will be something I take through my career, is that, you know, I want to share a good relationship with the boys that I'm competing with.
100% true. I mean, Jack and Chris, as we mentioned earlier, who won the gold medal in Rio, they were literally the best of mates. They lived together, they did everything together. Like they were so tight, and it was displayed in their performance. So you're completely right. But you already talk like you're the leader of a team. You already talk in that way, so you're doing all the right things already to position yourself as someone that can be a leader. And to do it so early is incredibly powerful. So you just need to keep on putting in the hard work to make it to back up the words, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, like what you asked before, Freddie, about, you know, the benefits of, you know, doing all other sports. I think because, you know, cycling is primarily an individual sport at the end of the day. I think the benefit of me, you know, playing rugby for so long, you know, you're sharing a dressing room with, you know, 15, 20 other lads, you know, you have to buy into that team ethos. So I think that's one of the things I've carried into my cycling journey, is that, you know, we are a team, and I really do enjoy that team environment, which I think a lot of cyclists, you know, because that's not their primary objective when they get into it, you know, it's sometimes a bit of a learning curve. And, you know, you do step into the velodrome and you compete in the team pursuit, and you've got to, you know, back the people around you to perform as well. I think it's not something that comes incredibly easy to a lot of others, but I think that's definitely one of the benefits, and I think something I picked up from doing other sports.
That's a great reflection. And I think, because that's something I've not experienced really. I've only experienced the synchro side of things, but I always had a good relationship with teammates. But even in synchro diving, what I liked about it, in a way there was added pressure, but I actually found most of the time that pressure took me out of my own head. Like I was more likely to, I'm just thinking about like, what do I need to do to support them, rather than just like all this extra like nonsense that's just typically going around my mind, right? And so I found that really powerful. But I suppose just for me, like from, you know, my final question in this main section is just kind of touching on that, and obviously you know, already talking about wanting to be a leader. I watched just a little reel that you had of that interview with you and your dad with Calm, and I was amazed at how open both of you were, and how vulnerable your dad was being, but also in front of you, and that it really struck me, because, you know, like I've got a great relationship with my dad, but, you know, we haven't really gone to that level. Do you know what I mean? And you seem so calm, and I guess my question is, your dad's example of vulnerability, like, do you think how important do you think that is for leadership, and do you think that's also played an important role in that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, me and my dad's situation, you know, our relationship is, I think it's quite a unique one, because, you know, it's well documented recently, you know, the struggles my dad went through. I think the situations that we went through as a family and as a father and son relationship, it forced us to be vulnerable and open up and talk about, you know, how we're feeling, because we were living a lot of it together. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say you know, it kind of carries over into my, I mean, maybe, I guess it does in thinking about it now. It's not really something I've ever thought about, but yeah, I mean, I'd say, no, just thinking now to my relationship with my teammates, like, I always feel like you should know your teammates' situations, like off away from cycling. You know, like, if they got a girlfriend, you know, what are their parents' names? You know, like really simple things like this. And for me, that's an important one. You know, so you are, you know, so you are able to, you know, so, you know, if like, I don't know, if your teammate, you know, he's not maybe being himself that day or something, you go, you know, so you can have them conversations, you know. I think that it is important to have that kind of relationship, I think, with your teammates, because, you know, the better you know each other, the better you'll, you know, perform with each other, I feel.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure I've answered it great, because you know, it's not a question I've been confronted with before, but I hope I've answered it in a fairly decent way.
You absolutely have. You answered everything really, really well. Honestly, I think a lot of these questions are difficult. They're probably things that you've not thought about much, and especially jumping from kind of past to future, it's quite challenging. But I think the last thing to ask in this main section, before we wrap up, is if your career so far was a movie, what would the title be? And I hope you've been briefed on this, so you've had a little bit of time potentially to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I did see the briefing, don't worry.
Brilliant.
To be honest though, it's nothing really springs to mind, but I think, like, I wouldn't say a title would spring to mind, but I think, like, just it has been a pretty rapid progression for me. So somewhat along those lines, I guess. And, you know,
Rapid
like,
ascent.
you know, coming through adversity, and, you know, as well, like, I can't really hide from the fact that a lot of my life and personal life is, you know, especially like when it comes to my dad anyway, you know, it's in media, in the public eye. So dealing with that as well is a challenge in itself. You know, like having, you know, for example, like my parents separating, and you know, my dad's, you know, mental health issues, you know, these are all things that I don't think, you know, well, I know for a fact that, like, it's not a normal thing to have to deal with whilst going through your own journey.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, and it is a bit weird, like, sometimes, like, I know, you know, I'm going into work essentially, and the people my colleagues and people I'm around are like, they're probably reading these things in the news, and you're like, you know, it's not normal that, you know, that people can read about your everyday, and then you know, and you've got to go, it's like, oh, how's Ben going to go and perform alongside all this? So, okay, I haven't really got a title, word to put, you know, on the title.
We can work on it, because I mean, this is the title of the episode.
I hope in 15 years I do have a title.
Well, no, we'll work on something from what you've given us, because I think what you kind of said about the quick ascent, or, you know, something that kind of sprung to mind, almost like a cycling analogy, like quick off the marks or quick out the blocks or something like that, kind of fits, because
something like that will work.
Because we need something for the title of the podcast, mate.
Yeah, well,
but I think
we'll go like Under Pressure or something.
Ooh,
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, like, you know, I think a good one is like pressure makes diamonds. It's always a good saying, I guess.
Nice.
Someone I've grown up making with, like, that was one of his mottos, so that springs to mind, I think.
Like, what about like climbing under pressure or something? I feel like there's a slight, like,
Well, I'm not a climber,
cycling.
so
True.
I'm not a climber, so
Yeah.
The use of a motto or the use of like a mantra for it, to be honest. Like I think pressure makes diamonds. I think that actually, you know, you're a person that's under pressure, of course, because of a vast array of things. And, you know, pressure does make diamonds, and we yet to see if you know, you become a diamond. You want to become a diamond, you aspire to become a diamond. And you know, I think that's a really intriguing mentality to have, because you're trusting that the pressure is going to create something amazing for you. And I hope it does. I think it'll be fantastic. I'd love to see it, and I'll definitely be following the journey from here on out.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I feel like that from this, from this episode, that really like touches on a lot of the things you've spoken about. So I think really like it, actually.
We've got past the 17-minute mark here.
No, I was just looking at that as well. I was just waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, I loved what you said. At one point, you said like a kid can have a dream, right? Like I thought that was such a cool line. But I think this probably is a better title.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I like it.
Amazing.
Like
All right, let's lock it in. Well,
let's lock it in.
Yeah, Ben, massive thank you. First of all, just to kind of wrap up this main episode, I think honestly, you've kind of blown. It's probably fair for me to say, blown both of us away with your maturity, with your mindset, with your ambition, and being unafraid to say that, but in such a humble way. Still, I think that's a kind of remarkable thing to have both of those.
Yeah.
And yet you pull that off so well. It was just.
Well, I feel my life has forced me to grow up fast. From 7 years old, and my dad winning the Tour de France and the London Olympics. And having my life changed for me, not just for him, but for me and my sister, my mum, people around me, and then like the challenges that have come after that. It's forced me to do that, but also with that, I've known how fast things can change and deteriorate almost as well. So, I am grateful for the experiences I've had in my life so far. So, I'm just really proud that two amazing athletes achieve such great things yourselves. To receive kind words like that.
Well, it's our pride to have you on the show, and that is where we'll end this main episode. But Ben is going to hang around just a little bit more for one more dive. But yeah, that is where we will end this main episode. So Ben is going to hang around for one more dive. So if you're not there yet, in our bonus section on Patreon, the link is in the show notes. So please join us there for all our bonus content. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next one.